The used bearing that I removed, I'm going to use this. So that worked. And also, this was really loose and spinning. It's the race for the bearing for the differential. So I staked it. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spots. Doesn't matter how many spots, just try to make it even. And you notice that the stakes have to be really close to whatever you're trying to stake. Here's the new bearing, and I measure it with a caliper. It's flat. This is the same thickness as this, so it's flat both sides. That's the part number. And what's weird is the old bearing had actually stampings on the race itself, which makes no sense. You would want that to be completely flat, but actually maybe it's just ink. This one doesn't have it. There's text on this side. It says Japan on it. This side doesn't have any printing. So I'm going to figure out which side I want to put the bearing in. Okay, so I decided to put it in printed side this way towards the seal. What's weird is when I put it in, it kind of just fell in. See that, but basically falls in at least to a certain spot. And I oiled up the wall before I put it in, and also oiled up the wall on the bearing. So now I gotta find something that will go in here. You can't use the old bearing because then you're gonna drive two bearings in, and that's not right. So I'll find something that will only touch the outer race. You don't want to hammer in the inner race. So I found this, and it's not a perfect fit, but I believe it's just barely contacting it. So I'll just make sure that this is centered when I hit it, and I'm going to hit it in a circular motion. And another thing that I found is this is one of the taper bearings for the differential, and so the outer race actually sticks out more. And it's a fairly good fit here. So, but I can't really tell what it's contacting. So since I'm not 100% sure, I'm not going to use this unless I have to. Can I use this? So let's see if I can get started. Alright, I'm going to hold this while I tap this in. I first started out putting this metal bar here to try to make it so that it only went flush with this this race around it. And I spun it 90 degrees and was tapping it in, but it wasn't going in perfectly it wasn't going down low enough. So I did this at an angle at first, and then I just slowly increase the angle to make it go down, and it feels pretty flush. So I'm gonna go with that. This part goes down a little bit more, but I think it's okay. This one is fairly straightforward. The reason why this metal bar says rough and smooth on this side because this hole right here, the metal sticks outwards here, so it's rough here, and so I put it on the smooth side that doesn't have that on here, so it doesn't cut up the seal. So what I did is I just tapped it here, moved it down, tapped it, and so now I'm pushing it, and it's flush with this, so I think that's correctly installed. I realized that this thing actually goes down a little bit, so there's like a lip around here for some reason. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this washer because the bottom is flat, and I'm going to put it inside there to get this down just a tiny bit more. And the same thing with the seal on the transmission housing. I'm going to use that washer to make it go down to that level. I found something that fits a lot better, this old bearing. So I'm going to use this to drive it to the correct depth. Okay, so on the cases, there's this seal, and then there's the axle seal, and then there's the axle seal on the transmission housing. This is the torque converter housing, and also don't forget there's this, and that's probably the shaft for the position thing. It's like a shaft, so don't forget to replace that oil seal too. Alright, so I got an adapter. It's a blind bearing puller. It was like the second biggest size. I expanded it, and I'm gonna try to hammer it out. I need to expand it more. Right, so the slide hammer wasn't working, so I'm gonna try just using a paint can opener. It seems to be working. Yep. So that works. And since the walls of this is steel, and there should be the walls are steel, and also the top is probably a little bit of steel, like a small steel lip inside there somewhere. So you won't have to worry too much about damaging this wall. Just clean it up and then put the new one in, and just make sure it's flush. So get a washer or something that's flat. Alright, so I've already showed where to install the 3 CPC valves, and so now I'm going to skip around and show you everything else. This one is talking about type 1 and type 2 servo bodies. And basically it says blow air in here and find out where it comes out. It should come out that hole. If you have a type 2, it comes out that hole. Well, this servo body for the 5-speed, at least on mine, it's asking to blow through that hole, and it comes out here. So what you do is you install this plug, and then I used a punch to tap it down. Basically it just constricts the hole to a really tiny hole. One step of the directions require you to use the smallest bit that they give you. It's 0.046 millimeter, and it's so small that it's not going to fit onto the chuck. So what I did was not near the bottom of the bit, but near the top, I took a piece of paper towel and I wrapped it there. And make sure you spin the drill to make sure it doesn't wobble. So this one was centered, it was fine. And for the servo body, the plate that's on top of it, the 3 holes that you're going to drill are these 3 right here. Not that hole. These 3. And what I did was I drilled it here, and then I flipped the plate over and I drilled the back of it. I just got a tiny bit bigger hole when I did both sides. Also, for the same bit, on the main separating plate, there's also 3 holes you have to drill here. One is, I'm pretty sure it's here. That one, that looks like I drilled out. Looks like this hole right here was drilled out. And the last hole, I think it was this one. So you're basically enlarging the holes, and it's so small it's really hard to tell, because here's the hole that I enlarged, and the original hole would have looked like this. So it's really small. Alright, so on the main valve body there's 2 plates, this plate and this one that has the spring. You're gonna take this plate off, and there's a few things that you have to do. Let's see, one is you have to plug this hole, and basically they give you a cotter pin, a really tiny one. You stick it through and you fold it a little bit, and then you trim it to shorten it. And then I used pliers, like with a flat head, and I pushed it down. It's a really small cotter pin. And then next, it wants you to check this hole to make sure it's not too big, and mine was too big. And I think pretty much this is the factory plate, so I mean, I don't know why they would say to check if this is too big, because it's gonna be too big. So to fix it, they give you a little aluminum plug. You stick it on here, and this side faces up, not this side. So you put the plug in here, lay it on something hard. I used this steel bar, and I whacked it with a hammer to flatten it a little bit. But after that, you take a center punch. I just took like something like this, and I guessed the center. So after you hammer that plug in there, you're gonna punch it to get the center. You're gonna drill it with this bit. It tells you what size it is, but you drill it with the small bit first. Then you use the this is 0.125 inches, so this is 1/8. So this is the final hole. And also, before you install this aluminum plug, you actually have to use a 3/16 inch bit, which they don't give you. You have to have that yourself. So 3/16 inch bit. You're gonna drill out the factory hole that was on this plate. Then you're gonna hammer the aluminum plug in here. Then drill with this one, and then drill with this one. And that's how I got that hole. And I think this hole was drilled out too. I forgot what size. Probably this really small one. Back on the main valve body. This is I think it's the torque converter valve. So it goes into this hole right here, and it originally had like a stainless steel spring, like a black or this color spring. It wants you to replace it with the green spring. So that's really easy to do. Also, under here, it also wants you to replace the spring here, because there's a check ball there's a check ball there, and it had a stainless steel spring. Well, the kit wants you to replace it with this white spring, so that's pretty easy too. And then you're just gonna put the plate back on. And so this goes, I'm not putting it in now, but it goes in there. Next, it wants us to put in this pink spring, and there's two bodies. This is the accumulator, and that's what we need. And then there's the top accumulator. The top accumulator has a smaller hole, and it doesn't have what this thing has, which is two check balls in here. So we want this one, the one with the two check balls. And there's, so the two check balls are here, and I think here. Anyways, what we need is the one with the piston. So the piston is gonna be in this one. So we need to get to this. Alright, so it's this one. Took out the circlip. Here's your piston. And the pink spring is obviously not the big one. So we're going to take this out. And it's obviously the one that's in the center. So let's see what the difference is. Well, it's a lot longer. I'm not sure if length is the only difference. This seems really stiff. Anyways, so you're going to replace the old one with the pink spring. So this goes inside here. Actually, let's just put it together. That, and then this goes over it. And then you're just going to reinstall this back in there and put the circlip back on. Okay, the pressure regulator valve, I'm pretty sure I showed it already. And the only other part that I didn't show is it says inspect in this area right there. Because sometimes maybe somebody already rebuilt this transmission, and what they did was they drilled a hole to make the line to converter charge, and these kits came out afterwards. So check to see if somebody already drilled it, and if they did, they want you to plug it up. And then I should have showed this part already. And then the only last thing is this spacer in the torque converter. It prevents the bearing from walking towards the drain back hole. So this is a really neat feature. Alright, this one that we plugged with a cotter pin, make sure that it's cut short enough, and if you didn't, then make sure it's angled correctly so that it's not caught on one of the walls for the fluid circuit underneath here. I'd show you, but I've already angled it correctly, so I don't want to do it again. And to double check, make sure that when you push down on here, that there's no gap here, because that means that you've caught that cotter pin on one of the walls. So this is ready to go. I've got the white spring and the check ball here. This one should also have a check ball under it. It does. Filter. right now it's not important, but there's 2 dowel pins, 2 here, and I've put the plate on the torque converter housing. I can't be 100% sure, but all I see is this dowel pin right here, and so there's this dowel pin. Ignore this one for now. This connects to the transmission housing, and if you can see, there's also another pin here just like that one, but it's rusted shut on that one, so I wasn't able to take it off. It's just that. Looks like there's one right here. So I believe I'm pretty sure these are the 2 that are rusted onto that case. And I don't know what this is. This looks like it's another, at least it's a oil pipe or something. There's something there, because it's got a ridge in it. It's got a ledge in it. So for this, all 3 holes are drilled. I forgot where. It looks like one's right here. Looks like one is right here. And the other one looks like it's right here. And the holes are so tiny that I don't even see much of a difference, because I think this is what a standard hole looks like. Anyways, make sure there's no paper towel fibers under here or in the race. So I put it on here. You can't put this upside down. You can't, because it's got the race there. There's no way you can put this in upside down. This one you can, but I looked through my videos and it looks like the smooth side's up, and the side that's got the race or the groove in it, see that groove? I saw in my videos that that's the way it was, so I'm just gonna trust that that's correct. So the important things that I see is these 2 dowel pins, which don't matter now because we're gonna drop the main valve body on top of this. And I just visually checked the clearance. It looks good. I'm not gonna check it anymore because I don't want my stuff to fall out of place. It looks good though. Obviously your eyes aren't that accurate, but whatever. I'm gonna call it good. So this is the only important one that I see, this dowel pin, because underneath there, that's all I could see. And this solid rod goes in here, and so we're gonna put the main valve body on first and then drop that in. Okay, so 2 things that I'm gonna do is this drops in here. Okay, at this point I'm a little bit nervous because I don't know if you can see this, but there has to be a pipe that goes in here. So it's not, I don't think this is a dowel pin. There's a pipe that goes in there, and there has to be a pipe that goes in there. And I can't figure, at this time I don't know what those are. I do see one pipe stuck to here. It's like a short pipe, so probably it goes to one of those, but then I don't know where the other pipe is. I'm just going to show you what I know so far. This solid metal rod goes through the main valve body into the torque converter case. This green check spring, this is the torque converter check valve. Gonna clean that up first and lubricate it before I put it in there. So I dropped it in there, and remember, you should have your white spring and check ball under there. And just keep making sure that everything is sitting flush down here when you push this thing down. Spray brake cleaner on these 4 bolts and let them dry. These are 12 millimeter on the head, and so there's 3 of them right here. This one is a 10 millimeter head. That should be 6 millimeter body, diameter body, and it goes right there. So I'm gonna torque these down, and I'll try to get the torque specs so I can actually do this right. Something I just realized, I sprayed the green and the white spring and all the paint came off. So I'm gonna do the same with all the springs. Here's the paint spring from the Accumulator. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. Oh, why they painted these things. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna check the black springs too. Even though they're black, they might actually be black spray paint. Okay, so here's the top accumulator, and I was right. That thing's way too shiny to be metal, so I'm gonna get this one and the other 2 from the other body. Just spray it with gel and paint off. On the servo body, just remember these 2 with the weird end plugs. Take those out and then spray the springs to get rid of the spray paint. One more spring, it's inside here. So I realized I don't need a clamp anymore, so you're going to push it against the ground and do not bend these pipes. Unbolt this while you push this down. What you could do is actually just, instead of disassembling everything, you can just spray it right in there and it should get some of the paint out. But I'm just going to do it the right way because I already know how to do this and it's not that hard. So there's the blue spring. And we're just going to we're going to get the paint off. Alright, this is not really a how to reassemble, but basically, let's see. I put the plates on, stator goes in here. These are 12 millimeter heads with 8 millimeter diameter bodies, and so these are 13 foot-pounds, which is 156 inch-pounds. Then it's also got 10 millimeter bolt, and those are, I think they're like 104.4 inch-pounds. And Honda says 8.7 foot-pounds. I think I said 104.4 inch-pounds, right? Yeah, so 104.4 inch-pounds. Honda recommends 8.7 foot-pounds. And Hiriam on YouTube, he says 9 foot-pounds. But I'm going to go with 8.7. It seems pretty good. So basically, put this on with this upwards. The manual valve is back in, and next we're gonna put in this right in here. Okay, so the shift shaft, or whatever this is called, basically it the spring connects here and to the shaft, and I'm pretty sure the only way you can do it is with this long part connected here, because this shorter hook won't fit around here. And so this the little pin from here goes into the manual valve, and this goes here, and then another servo body is gonna go down and capture the top part of this. Alright, so I've already said it like 3 times, but the big gear, there's only one way it can go in. The small driven gear, the little groove faces down. It doesn't face up. It definitely faces down. Okay, so on top of this, on top of the stator and the pressure regulator plate, we're going to put on the regulator. So just remember that torque converter check valve is there, and that race captures this top part of the stator. So then I'm just gonna put my 10mm bolts on here, and just like I showed before, I made cardboard cutouts with, I traced it and then I put the bolts in there, that way you don't forget which order it is. Just make sure you clean up the bottoms because it's gonna have cardboard on it. Pipe here was loose, and what I did to tighten it up, to seal it, is I cut some small grooves into it. You can see it right there. I cut 2 of them, and I did it with the tubing cutter. This is actually meant to cut off pipe, so be really careful. I just started off really slow, and I put just a little bit of a cut, and that kind of pushes the metal out enough so that it seals it. And I did 2 of them. So do that if your pipes are really loose and they spin, because I think these things actually shoot pressure oil out of here. So I think it'd be better if you get these tight, because that way you don't lose that pressure. And right now it's really tight. Alright, really important, I had to take this thing back off because in order to install the servo body, there's a guide pin under here, and you can't put this whole body in when this is in the way. So, and you can't move this because this is in the way. So I had to take this whole thing off, take this pin out, push it aside, put the servo body in, then put this back in. So try not to make that mistake. I'm gonna actually see if this needs any extra clearance too. This should be the accumulator body. So it looks like I had to remove the regulator again, because one of the bolts for the servo body is right there, so you can't get to it without removing it. So make sure you get this one in first. And then this one is giving me problems. It's not sitting flat, so I'll see what's going on with that. Alright, looks like this one's not sitting flat. Because it's hard to see, but there's a tiny gap, and it's because it's actually sitting on both of there's the piston and then the other cap. So this one has to be bolted down before it sits flat.